This week we are visiting Seashores together. The seashore is a special place where sea meets shore, where water meets land, and there are so many interesting creatures and plants to learn about. Let's sit beside another watery spot, our vernal pool, as we begin to think about life at the seashore. Can you find the tadpole in this close-up picture? I think the tadpole wants to listen too. Hello, Wild Riders of Mamaroneck. Welcome back to our sit spot. There are still tadpoles. I feel that the water level is going down in the vernal pool as we inch a little bit towards summer. We did have snow this week up where I live, but today is a gorgeous spring day. You can see that the leaves are out, even bigger and bigger. In front of me, the red leaves are out. Behind me, the bright green leaves are out. The grass is greener, and you can probably hear the sound of a tractor in the background because the neighbor next door, the farmer, is tilling up the field. If you could smell where I am right now, you would smell the smell of manure because yesterday was also a beautiful day and the farmer was laying manure out on the field so that the crops will grow well. All of these things happen with the seasons. We've talked about so many things about forests, about trees, birds, our nature journals, but today's a little bit different. Today we're thinking about the seashore. This is Seashore Weekend. I don't live near a seashore. I'm much farther from the ocean than you, and I thought I might go to a lake and talk with you a little bit about lake creatures and plants, but then I realized my daughter, Hope, she's a scientist and she's a researcher and a student, and last summer I got to visit her down near you, only about 41 minutes away in Brooklyn, where she was studying horseshoe crabs. So today I have invited her to share with us some of her videos about horseshoe crabs so that you can learn and I can think more deeply about one seashore creature. We were fortunate this week to learn about many different seashore creatures from the naturalists at Sheldrake, and today we'll really think about one a little bit more deeply, and that is the Atlantic horseshoe crab. I have to share with you something Hope showed me and brought to me from her research, and these are horseshoe crab molts. Horseshoe crabs are one of the oldest species that has not changed very much over 450 million years. And you can see this, here's a larger molt. You can see horseshoe crabs molt their whole exoskeletons. You may have seen dead horseshoe crabs on the beach. They're darker brown than this, and they come out of their bodies. You can see here the little legs and the tail. They come out right here. They slip out between this crack and make a new shell. Each time they grow so much they need a new shell. So horseshoe crabs are fascinating creatures. They've been around for such a long time, hardly changing at all. So today we will be looking at horseshoe crabs a little bit more deeply, and then we'll talk about our nature journals. I'm really glad you're here, and I introduce to you my daughter Hope. Let's take a trip to Plum Beach in Brooklyn. Only a 41-minute trip from Sheldrake Environmental Center and home to many seashore creatures. Welcome to Hope Vanderwater, a Fordham University environmental science student who researched Atlantic horseshoe crabs at Plum Beach in Brooklyn, New York during the summer of 2019. Let's visit the seashore and the lab to look closely at one tidal and ocean creature, the Atlantic horseshoe crab. When the tide is low, there is so much to find and to look at along the beach. Sometimes scientists bring specimens back to the lab for study. Like birds, snakes, and turtles, horseshoe crabs begin their lives as eggs. A female horseshoe crab burrows down into the sand about 10 centimeters deep and lays thousands of eggs several times a summer. Only a tiny amount survive. They can be green, blue, or even white or pink. See these horseshoe crab embryos spinning in their eggs? They have all of their parts except for their tails. Look into the microscope again, and you can see some horseshoe crab larvae These horseshoe crabs have just recently hatched. Horseshoe crabs go through several different molts as instars and juveniles. This means that they lose their whole outer covering and grow a new one.
The small one is called the third instar. That's the stage of development he's at. It's the third stage after they hatch out of their embryo stage in the egg. This is when they first begin to develop a tiny tail and swim through the sand by themselves. And then he, next year, will be about this size as he goes through several molts and becomes a juvenile crab. Look at how tiny. Good luck, baby.
Horseshoe crabs move by tunneling through sand. Their color is like the color of sand, and this helps them avoid predators.
Right. So, here's a little juvenile horseshoe crab. What else do you want me to say? This one's probably about 1 year old. Here are two of his eyes. He's got two tiny ones right there, which disappear as they become adults. This main part is called the prosoma. This back part is called the opistosoma, and this little thing is his telson, or his tail. These are his legs. Very hard to see.
And he made that little trail?
Yes. He plows his little trails as he digs into the sand.
Goodbye.
Look at him go.
Atlantic horseshoe crabs are juveniles for between 8 and 11 years. Now Hope will show us some parts of an adult horseshoe crab.
Male horseshoe crab. All this bumpy stuff on his back are called fouling organisms. Some of them are barnacles, some of them are slipper shells or crepidula, which are little shellfish creatures. And then some seaweed gets stuck in the cracks here and grows on their back as well. If we flip them over, this is the underside of the crab. This is the prosoma, like the baby has. This is the opistosoma. This is the telson, their tail. These are their legs. Back ones are little legs and feet that are meant to dig and push sand. These are their gills here. He's opening them for us. They're called book gills because they have so many pages of gills, and they're very efficient because they can work in both air or water. He can't pinch you. You can put your hands here. They're very gentle, although they look threatening.
Is this a big one or middle-sized, or what would you say?
This is a small to medium male horseshoe crab. The females can get 3 times the size or bigger. But the males tend to be much smaller than the females.
Well, what happened if you put him back down?
He'll probably dig himself back into the hole. Yeah.
Thank you for joining Hope and me at Plum Beach in Brooklyn. Now it is time to think about our nature journals. Hi, 4th and 5th grade writing friends. So, how about those horseshoe crabs, huh? They're pretty fascinating, and the more I learn, the more fascinated I become. One thing I just can't get over is how these molts, how every single teeny tiny bit of this horseshoe crab has molted in one piece. That is remarkable, and I'm so happy I had the chance to share with you some of those little video clips. When I took them, I never knew who I'd share them with, and I'm really glad it was you. We're not at the seashore. We're still sitting here by the side of the vernal pool where we don't have clams, and we don't have horseshoe crabs or moon snails or bladderwrack. We don't have these things here, but we can still imagine them, and we can look at the pages we were given from Sheldrake, that scavenger hunt page. We can look at the videos that we have and see them again. We can go online and we can read about these different seashore creatures, and we can close our eyes and maybe go through photos we have of times we have visited the shore. I'd like to share with you something you might wish to try in your nature journal, something I did that I enjoyed very much. Even though I couldn't go to the shore, I feel like I'm there. First, what I did is you can see on these 2 pages some drawings around the edges. I drew these looking directly at the page we were given from the Sheldrake naturalists of the scavenger hunt. So everything on that page I drew on the edges, and I looked closely and then looked at my page and looked closely and kept going back and forth with my eyes from photograph to page, from photograph to page, so that I could try to understand the structure and the function and the shapes of these objects, so that when I see them on the beach, I'll recognize them. If I see this shape on the beach, I will know that the shape of this creature that looks like a horseshoe and has a long tail, I know that pattern. That's a horseshoe crab pattern. I will recognize it. I will know it if it's this size. I will know it if it's this size. I will know it if it's this size, because I have seen it and I've drawn it too. Drawing helps with that. So you can see the drawings on the edges here. For our writing this week, I am reading this book called The Alphabet of the Trees, A Guide to Nature Writing. It's edited by Christian McEwen and Mark Statman, and it's a beautiful book filled with all kinds of ideas and ways that different people can write about and have written about nature. And one of them I want to share with you is simply beginning a piece of writing with the phrase, "I'd like to save." And you might choose to begin with, "I'd like to save and write paragraphs," or "I'd like to save and write poetry," thinking about the seashore this time, and what from the seashore, actual objects, smells, sounds, feelings, what would you like to save from the seashore? So I did a whole lot of these. I started writing in paragraphs. I'll read you those first. I'd like to save. I'd like to save the sound of waves, to hold my hand up to my ear and listen to the tides on any old day in winter. People might look at me funny and ask, "Do you have an earache?" And I would just shake my head, knowing that I had a secret way to hear the sea, no matter where I was. I'd like to save the footprints I made, one after another in the sand. I would like to save how they looked, filling up with seawater. And then I have some I wrote as poems. I'll read you a couple of those. I'd like to save one grain of sand. I would teach it to talk and to tell me stories of the old, old sea. It would be tiny, whispering sea stories, singing sea songs all day long from my pocket. I'd like to save the memory of a leg, one sea star lost. I kind of want to draw that here. I would like to save the story of a moon snail in the shell where he once lived. I didn't know where this few words, "I'd like to save," would take me. And I felt that it took me to a bit of a scientific place and a bit of a mysterious place. And when we think about nature and when we spend time in nature, and even when you write in your nature journal, if it's a lovely day, you might, even though you're not at the seashore, you might choose to still be outside, because then you can feel the weather on you, you can feel the mystery a little bit, and blend the science and the mystery into your nature journal. So, as always, it's a pleasure to see you, and I'll see you soon. It's feeding time in the lab. Sometimes slipper shells stick to the shells of horseshoe crabs, and these scientists have cut up the bodies of the slipper shells to feed them to the small horseshoe crabs. Notice that the mouths of horseshoe crabs are on the bottoms of their bodies.
Two little front feet in the front are just for grabbing food. So it's just gone. These 2 feet.
Oh my gosh. Give him another one.
He doesn't say please.
He's hungry.
He is hungry.
Don't put your finger in there.
Alright, he'll eat me.
Think about the seashore plants and animals you learned about this week and the ones you have seen in your life. What will you write about? What will you draw? Remember that you can look at books and websites. You can also watch any of this week's videos again before or as you read and write. When you think about the seashore, what would you like to save? Draw, write, daydream, think about the shore, and then begin a page in your nature journal with the words, "I'd like to save." Right wild, my Mamaroneck friends, wherever you are.